What does technical debt mean? In this module, we will arrive at a clear and useful definition of the term technical debt that we can use in practice to help us identify real issues within our software development teams. Issues that are costing us money and will continue to cost us more and more money if left unaddressed. There are various definitions of the term technical debt that pop up on Google if you search for it, and this is one of the reasons for the confusion around the concept. Wikipedia says that technical debt, also known as design debt or code debt, but can also be related to other technical endeavours, is a concept in software development that reflects the implied cost of additional rework caused by choosing an easy or limited solution now, instead of using a better approach that would take longer. Another definition from productplan.com says that technical debt is the result of prioritizing speedy delivery over perfect code. And Atlassian says that technical debt is the difference between what was promised and what was actually delivered. Well, this one at least leaves some room for non-technical causes, doesn't it? Whilst these definitions do describe some of the types of technical debt and indicate some of the possible causes, they are too narrow in my view. They suggest that the issues are all as a result of bad coding and due to project schedule pressure and bad decision making. But there is far more to it than that. The definition of technical debt that I like best for its simplicity and completeness is this one from the book Software Design X-Rays by Adam Tornhill. And he says simply that technical debt is code that's more expensive to maintain than it should be. After all, if something is making your software maintenance more expensive than it should be, that's kind of like paying interest on a financial debt, isn't it? If our aim is to reduce these costs, then we need to look at all the factors that are increasing the production and support costs of your software so that we can identify which ones are hurting the most and focus on those. So the short answer to the question, what is technical debt, is that technical debt is code that is more expensive to maintain than it should be. It's code that you're paying interest on. This is the definition that we'll keep coming back to throughout this course, as basically anything that's costing you money, more money than it should do, needs to be looked at. So where did this term technical debt come from? The term technical debt was first introduced as a metaphor by Ward Cunningham in 1992, when he was explaining the trade-off between development speed and rework in creating software. His original intent was to explain why it is sometimes necessary to start developing software in order to get feedback before you knew the full requirements of the project. Back then, waterfall development processes were common in software engineering, and a major headache for software projects was analysis paralysis, where a massive effort went into documenting requirements before development started, and then the requirements that had been missed or didn't come to light until the very end of the project in the user acceptance phase, when they typically would cost millions to put right. And this resulted in a lot of cancelled projects. This was one of the reasons for the agile movement, but that's a story for another day. Cunningham said that it was not about poor code. In his view, there was never an excuse for poor code. Technical debt should sometimes be taken on deliberately in order to get some benefit in the short term, like when you take out a mortgage in order to quickly buy a house so you can live in it. But in that situation, you know you need to make interest payments on the mortgage until it's paid off. And you know that if you don't pay the interest, your house will be repossessed and you will be evicted. In the same way, you might deliberately take on technical debt in your software in order to get a product to market quickly, or fix a bug that is causing a major issue for your customers. But you should know that you will be paying interest on this software until you pay off the debt by refactoring your software and implementing a more scalable or maintainable long-term solution. If you don't pay off the technical debt, it will cumulatively increase in your software over time, change on change, until your code becomes completely unmaintainable. Some technical debt is intentional, like choosing a quick implementation to meet a deadline, knowing that you will need to go back and change the design when you start to scale up. And some is accidental, like writing duplicate functionality in different places in your software because you didn't know the old code was there or what it did. Some of these problems are technical, but others are more social or organizational, relating to the structure of development teams themselves and the communication that needs to happen between teams and developers with different priorities. Developers will sometimes use the idea of technical debt to try to explain to their managers the need for making changes to existing software that do not directly change its functionality, but instead will make it easier to test and add features and fix bugs in the future. And by easier, I mean quicker and cheaper and more predictable to estimate. They are saying that the software is painful to work on, fragile and error-prone. Development of functional changes with significant technical debt will take longer than it should do, and these changes are more likely to result in bugs. As time is money, the metaphor equates technical debt to financial debt, where interest must be paid until the debt is paid off. However, unlike fiscal debt, the term technical debt implies a precision that does not exist. You can't look at a given software code base on its own and determine how much technical debt you have. It all depends on how much your software needs to evolve and change in the future. After all, if you never needed to change one part of your software again, you have zero technical debt in it, however badly designed the code is. In reality, every time your software is changed, the additional time needed to safely make the changes and test for and fix the resulting bugs is costing you money. It isn't a strict function of time, however. Unlike mortgage interest rates, you only pay this interest on areas of the software that you need to change. Unfortunately, it has also been found that changing software frequently increases the technical debt within it, especially when many different developers have worked on a particular module of code over several years. This means that the areas of software that you need to change most often are the areas that end up costing you the most. So now we understand that technical debt is code that is more expensive to maintain than it should be. And we understand the metaphor of technical debt, the idea that the extra expense is the interest that you are paying on your technical debt, change after change. We understand that if you take on technical debt, you will continue to pay this interest until you go back and fix the technical debt items, either by refactoring the code or spending time on a more scalable and maintainable design. We can start to see now why technical debt accumulates in successful software companies. In these companies, the focus is on adding features that customers are asking for, features that open up new opportunities for the business, or fixing urgent issues that customers are complaining about. These things are visible to product managers, and therefore given priority. Technical debt can seem invisible from the outside, which means it often remains hidden in a software application for years. And the important work necessary to pay it down is deprioritized in favor of the urgent stuff. But as we saw earlier, if this continues unaddressed year on year, the software will eventually become so unmaintainable that it will seriously hurt your company. And starting to fix these issues when you have millions of lines of code on your hands is obviously more difficult than doing it at the beginning. Although technical debt is not easily visible, the symptoms of technical debt are all too visible in the impacts that it has on your entire software business. And they will continue to increase in severity over time. We will look in more detail at these symptoms in the next module.